Studio International has come to the Paris studio of Miguel Chevalier to talk about his pioneering computer art practice, his Metacities project, and his interest in making the real virtual and the virtual real. You've been working with computer science as a means of expression in the field of visual arts since 1978. Obviously, technology has changed a lot during this time, but what was it that led you to work with computers in the first place?
Well, when I entered in, I was 19 years old in the School of Fine Arts in the École des Beaux-Arts de Paris. But you know, when you study the art history, you see all the avant-garde, they push so far the art to also to destroy the notion of the art. So for me, it was very hard how we can do after the conceptual art what we can explore, you know, because the evolution from the impressionist, the cubism, and all the avant-garde, they push so far the idea. So for me, I discovered the first possibility of the computer, but the difficulty was to have the access, because the School of Fine Arts, they have no department of computer, but for me it was sort of feeling that I need to explore the possibility how to use this tool and how with this tool we can create art.
You actually gained access. The computers you first used were in the Optics Centre at the French National Centre for Scientific Research. How did you gain access there?
Yeah, because at this time the computer, it was not like we have now. The computers, you need to have all this space for the one computer, and the difficulty was the access. And to have the access, I need to convince some laboratory, because they have only the TV and the laboratory, scientific laboratory. We can have this kind of computer because it was really expensive at this time to have a computer. So I convinced one person who is an engineer to give me the access on the night. So to 1 o'clock on the morning to 6 o'clock on the day or on the night, I can have access to this computer. And at this time I discover step by step the possibility that the computer can be a tool very powerful because you manipulate light, you can modify the structure of the image, because at the beginning it was image in 2D, so we scan the image, and at this time I discover that in reality there are many artists from the past who give sort of prefiguration of what happened on the computer. So for me, I was so surprised, for example, to see that we are very close from one artist like Georges Seurat, because he takes inspiration with the scientific theory of the diffraction of the light of Chevreuil. And when we saw this, I say, oh, it's interesting, because it's sort of prefiguration of what happened on the TV and on the computer, you know. When you see the art history, especially of the 19th century and the 20th century, there are still explore so much possibility of to explore new possibility and new waves, you know, new territory, you know. And for me, the computer maybe was one possibility to explore that some other artists they have no possibility to explore. So it's why I take a lot of. I was very exciting to see how we can create a new art, you know. But the difficulty is when I developed this idea with this tool, most of the people they say, oh, he's a technician, he's not an artist, he's not art, he's nothing, you know. So the mentality is very difficult to convince the people that we can create art with this tool. But At the beginning, the people think, no, it's technique and that's it.
What would you describe as your tools and raw materials? So, for example, a painter might say the brush, the pigments, the palette. What are your materials that you're working with?
Of course, you have no pigment because, but it's interesting because the first software, you have 16 million of color, so it's not restrictive, you know, and you can transform the possibility of the color, you can modify the structure of the image, you can animate the image. So my idea was how we can develop sort of relationship between the painting and the digital, how we can develop some idea between photography and digital and video and digital, you know, because it's sort of platform in relationship with these three mediums, and so is why I start at the beginning, and step by step I try to explore the possibility of how to manipulate this image and create variation, like Monet, who tried to catch the notion of the light, and here you work with light, so we can create variation and you can create sensation of metamorphosis of the images, you know. So for me it was kind of a possibility to will be different from Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol, he repeats the same image and he changes the color, and here you can change the color but you can modify the image and you can transform the image and you can create this kind of variation.
And you really were at the cutting edge. You went in 1983, you went to New York to the Pratt Institute's digital department. Was this one of the first departments of this kind?
Well, of course, in France, the department of it doesn't exist at this time. And in New York, they just opened in School of Visual Art and Pratt Institute this department. But most of the people who are going are not artists who are going in this. They are more engineers. They was interesting to explore the possibility of the 3D. When I saw the possibility of this tool, I said, well, that's this tool that I want to use to do an art, you know. But of course, it was very hard because when I come back in Paris, I say to my parents, oh, I want to explore this possibility of this tool. It's unbelievable. That's the future. And my parents, by chance, they say, okay, you can stay at home, but after 5 years, you know, they say, do you think that you can live with this kind of art? Because nobody believes in this possibility of this to do art with this, you know. So I was convinced to. But with the perseverance and step by step, I made a few curators and some critics like Pierre Estany, who is much more open from many other people. And at this time, they said, well, it's not so bad what he's doing, you know. So I convinced a few persons, like Pontus Sultan, also he was a person who opened the Centre Pompidou, and so thanks to these people, they convinced me to follow this way, you know, because it was a challenge, you know, at the beginning to say to follow this way. Nobody believed in this, and they say no, you need to follow this way, and by chance. At the end of the 1980, I obtained the Museum of Modern Art, and I obtained some gallery who accept to show me in the Art Basel Fair or the FIAC. So they changed my life, but it takes at least about more than 8 years to be part of the evolution and to be integrated in like a young artist, of course, in one way, a new way, you know.
And now you're doing so much. I mean, you've got a show coming up at the Grand Palais, you're working on a project in Bordeaux, you've just shown at Lumiere in London, and you're also coming to London with two exhibitions, two simultaneous exhibitions at the Mayor Gallery and the Wilmot Gallery, where you're showing, you have an interest in urban models and the development of cities, and you're showing your meta-cities work. Can you explain a bit more about the ideas behind this work and what it involves?
Well, now it's going better and better, but it's never, it's all the time a new challenge, of course, because I have more money, but I spend much more money. So but in the sense, I am very happy to be, of course, thanks to the Mayor Gallery, to show for the first time, to have a one-man show in this great gallery. And the idea was also, because I do installation quite large, so it was sort of in the complementary to have this possibility to have the domestic piece on the gallery, but to show also an installation in the space of the Wilmot Gallery. Wilmot, it's an architect, and he's very also open to the integrate art inside of his architecture, and is a great opportunity, of course, because to do in the same time, to have the possibility to express my artwork in these two spaces, So the idea it was to create in the same time the different piece in relationship with the notion of the meta-cities. Is sort of the city who doesn't exist, but is part of like a sort of architecture of the cyberspace, And I am a lot of interested in architecture, not to build in real, but how to develop some models to create sort of generative piece, who it's sort of architecture model that I introduce in the software, and the software it generates variation at the infinity of sort of these meta-cities,
So you don't have an idea before you start of what it will look like, it kind of develops itself?
Well, I have an idea because I know the ingredients that I put inside of the software. So the software is, if you don't put nothing, you have nothing, So it depends of course, I integrate different models in 3 dimensions, and these models have different shapes. Like when you see the London or the different cities have different scale of the building, and all this building, the sort of library of buildings that I introduce in the computer. So, and the computer can decide by random how to bring to this architecture, and is why we can have sort of variation, and is not in this installation. It can be interactive, so the people can interact with this piece. They have an iPad, and when you touch, you can see on the right, on the left, and you can up or down, and you have different perspective and vision. So it's, for me, it's something that you cannot do with the traditional medium like the painting. Is not to say the painting is not the good medium, but it's another way in parallel, And it's, for me, it's interesting because I feel that I live in what happened today, And the art is a lot of in relationship with the evolution of the technique. Is why also for me it was interesting to use this tool, not to do the apologize of this tool, but how we can work with the tool of today.
When people are interacting in the gallery with the touchpads, do you see them as becoming a part of the work, or are they just passing by?
Well, it gives you more possibility. It's sort of potential, The piece, if the people don't interact, they will see this meta-cities going with you, and it's traveling, but it's a traveling at the infinity. So it's interesting to see the possibility of how with the interaction they give you different version of what you can see if you don't interact.
And then this big installation and then the smaller film, the screens that you'll be showing at the Mayor Gallery, is that one and the same work?
Yeah, is sort of complementary. You know, for me, it's a global project. You know, we can have this quite large installation because also it's interesting to show the digital. It can be on the screen, on the flat screen, but it can be a fixed image like this, and you can have a sculpture. And you can create also at the large scale to imagine also maybe in the future some project in the urban space or for the permanent project in the lobby. So I think for me the digital it's a very open tool, you know, and this possibility of this tool is to have possibility to the people can have for their home the piece, but we can also introduce at the scale of one building this kind of piece.
So in a way you have a work and then it can be made site specific to interact with that space.
Well, I am interested a lot of to use in the site specific. For example, I made also in unusual spaces like the King College Chapel of Cambridge or the Durham Cathedral in the north of England, or we made this huge project. It was an event in the Oxford Circus. For me, it's sort of how we explore the many possibility of this of the tool of the digital art.
You've also started making sculptures, so actually physical objects using, for example, laser cutting and 3D printing. How differently do you approach making the work when it's going to be a physical, tangible object?
Well, it's interesting for me the 3D printer and the laser cut and everything is because they can materialize something that is at the beginning virtual and is sort of post-virtual, you know. I don't know if the people can understand this notion of post-virtual, but it's at the beginning I create some virtual things, metacities, I develop many things in relationship with the artificial nature and different virtual seed and like fractal flowers seed, and the people can have the on the screen something virtual, but they can see also what is the virtual become real. And normally the most of the artists that I now they start with the real and they do a scan and they create something virtual. And here it's a software and the software generates some shapes. We can stop these shapes and because this shape is generated in 3 dimensions, and we can materialize this form in something real.
So in terms of the development of your work, the future development, is there a specific direction you see yourself going in? Is there anything you're working on that you're hoping technology might develop towards?
Well, it's one way that I explore, you know, but it's like when you do a research in the science, you explore the possibility and step by step you see how we can imagine other piece, also my work is a lot of in relationship with the evolution of the technique, you know, and this technique, they give me more and more possibility to use not only a screen, but now the LED, and the LED, the LED, it can be see also. Generally, most of my work is in the space quite dark or they need not so much light from outside. But now with the LED, we can also create some piece for some space with a lot of light, you know. So I don't know if it's good for the two. I don't know if I answer well to your question, but is also one possibility to give an extension of what I am doing.
And to bring it to more people and just to continue to explore.
Exactly, yes. I think the tool that I use is very open. So what sometimes is you need to reduce because the possibility is so large, you know, it's like this, and you need to to be focused on one way because if you are open for everything, you do nothing, you know.